Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Norma Juarez, and I work in the Alumni Relations Office at UNC. Thank you for joining us today for the Alumni Career Panel, Careers in Media and Communications. We are honored to be hosting such an amazing group of alumni professionals from across the United States. A couple of housekeeping items before we begin. This event is being recorded and will be available on demand after the event. I will be sharing the link of where you can find that in the chat feature, so make sure it's open so that you have access to that. I will also be sharing the panelists' LinkedIn information so that you can connect with them at a later time if you have additional questions. And once we are done with panelist introductions, I will also go off screen and return shortly before the event is over to provide a closing statement. Now, please help me welcome our panelists. Panelists, can I please have you introduce yourself by stating your name, title, company, UNC degree, and please by telling us a little bit about yourself. Lindsay Salazar, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Salazar. I graduated in 2009, Montfort School of Business. And what was the other thing? I own a radio station here in town, a Spanish radio station. So that would be Tigre Radio, most commonly known as that, but it's Greeley Broadcasting Corporation. And I am the president and owner.
Thank you, Lindsay. You're welcome. Ryan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Schuchard. I graduated in 2011 with dual degrees in public relations and advertising and political science. And I am currently the Vice President of Public Affairs at JPA Health.
Thank you, Ryan. Reginald?
Hello, everyone. I'm Reginald Hardwick, and I am the News and Public Affairs Director at Illinois Public Media. Our call letters here in Urbana is WILL, AM and FM and TV. And we are a public media station, but I actually wanted to be a television journalist. And so grew up in Elizabeth, Colorado, southeast of Denver, and came to the University of Northern Colorado, graduated in 1994, and went to work the next Monday at Channel 7 in Denver, where I was associate producer, and then worked in Rochester, New York, Denver again at Channel 4 in Denver, and then for 17 years in Dallas, Fort Worth in the NBC station as a producer and also executive producer. And then switched to public media and became a news director first at the PBS NPR station and Michigan State University in East Lansing. And then I came here to Urbana last year. And I think that's, yeah, and my degree was journalism, mass communications.
Thank you, Reginald. Now I'm going to have, Brady.
Hi, I'm Brady Hull. I'm the general manager of 1310 KFKA. It's a news, sports, and entertainment radio station. I actually moved up to Greeley in 2005, started at UNC, and then I interned at the radio station and just I fizzled with college, ended up going back a few years ago before my child was born, and had a few credits to get yet. And that's why I graduated in 17. I'm not 24. I know it's probably a surprise. So I went back and finished, but I've been working at KFK since 2008. I host a local sports talk show, 12 to 2. We're the voice of the Bears, and I graduated with a journalism degree. So I think that was everything.
Thank you so much, Brady. Now I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay Crum, who will be our moderator this afternoon. Lindsay.
Thank you, Norma, and welcome everyone to our panelists. Thank you for joining us, and to the students and alumni that are watching live and on demand. So excited that you're here to hear the insight of our alumni and consider your career in media and communication. I want to remind everyone that the Q&A section is open in the Zoom webinar. So if you'd like to pose a specific question to our panel or any particular panelist, please feel free to type that in the Q&A and I will ask that on your behalf. We do have some questions to help get the conversation going, including questions that students have submitted via email prior to the event. Being that this is UNC, we have to kick off with share about your UNC experience and how it led you to the career that you're currently in, and a little bit about the insight into your path. So how about we start with Brady? We'll go backwards. for
Okay,
Boutros?
Yeah, as far as how UNC helped, I'll tell you, a second time around too, when I was maybe a little more focused, it was phenomenal. Even though I was still at the station and doing a lot of my different radio station work here, just learning about various law, the journalism law, mass communications law, that kind of thing, was really eye-opening for me. It gave me the confidence that I needed, of course, to be in the radio business, doing interviews and talking to coaches and players and things like that. So yeah, and I mean, honestly, speech, giving speeches in class, doing that kind of thing, really prepared you for not just radio broadcasts, but sales. I mean, we do a lot of sales. We're a local radio station. So really it prepared me for a little bit of everything that, when you work in the radio business, you do have to face a little bit of everything. So yeah, very well prepared. Loved my time at UNC.
Wonderful. Reginald, how about you?
Well, way back in the 90s, for everyone who was born, it was, first of all, I was accepted to CSU, and I had two sisters that went to Colorado. But I came to UNC because, coming from a small town, I thought, I could really make a difference and really get to know the professors better. And, I had a wonderful professor who unfortunately passed away a few years after I graduated, Bob Hess. But I remember taking my first radio course with him and really, he was really honing in, on pronunciations and, really clear diction and things, and just giving the insights and the history of broadcasting. I was a pretty driven person, so I already knew what I wanted to do. But the fortunate thing also about UNC is that I was able to, even my freshman year, I was going after internships in Denver and did them at the same stations I eventually worked at, Channel 4 and Channel 7. I did spend time even at KFKA with the Joe Tennyson, who's a legendary, person there. And I just was able to go after all the experiences I needed to get extra experience outside of the classroom. And I think, that was really possible because of my experience at UNC. And I don't know if that would be as possible at a larger school like CU or CSU.
Appreciate that. Thank you. As a fellow Bear, class of 05, I must agree. I think UNC is the perfect size for opportunity. Ryan, how about you? You double majored. So did that lead to a specific career path for you and the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. I originally came to UNC to be a teacher. My family comes from teachers and police officers, but I took a political communications class during the election of 2008 with Professor Kelly Scott, and that totally sent my entire career and my life and everything on a totally different trajectory. So I switched majors shortly after that, and then I was really interested in the intersection of politics and media and communications. And so it just seemed natural to blend two majors together, kind of get the full immersion of the political science realm, but also have, kind of the well-rounded education they put together for journalism and mass communications. And that, like I said, changed everything. I eventually, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but that led me here to Washington, D.C. to work in politics and press and comms. And without UNC, there's no way I would have been here, hands down. So, yeah.
I love it. Thank you, Ryan. Lindsay, how about you?
Oh, well, I, like Brady and Reginald, am a lot older than I look. And so actually UNC was my second go round with college. My first go round was such a much larger school in Los Angeles, which I did not care for. And as you were mentioning earlier, the closeness of UNC, the fact that I could approach a professor and have a question answered, spoke miles to me. So I ended up finishing my degree at UNC there because it was easier. I actually had support. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, thinking they're going to go to a big city, go to this big school, and then you kind of get lost in the jumble. And I ended up graduating from the School of Business thinking that I was going to take off shortly thereafter. That did not happen because my dad had his own.
Oh, Lindsay, we just lost your audio.
Oh, there you go.
Here we go.
And so the problem is that after I did my 4 years of interning, I couldn't leave him because I became an asset. And with that, I grew more into my position. So I never really left, neither UNC nor my dad. So here I am.
I love that. And that's actually a great segue to the next question that I'd like for you and Reginald to respond to. A few of you have mentioned people, whether it's professors or father or someone that you worked with at KFK back in the day. Share with us someone who inspired you in your career, and what advice did they give you that you've really taken hold of and has helped you be successful?
Let's see, I can go if you'd like. The person, and like I said, I have very unusual because I was really driven to want to be in television news and everything. And the person who's been my lifelong mentor was the first woman and first Black anchor in Denver. Her name's Renelda Muse, and she in 1968 was like the first woman to anchor and report on Denver TV, and retired from the business in the 90s. But she, we met and she would send me scripts and everything. But I think also I had so many other mentors along the way. And before I came to UNC, said, be involved, go after as many internships as you can, learn what you can, the law classes in school, and learn how to write very well, and learn how to do everything, whether as a multimedia journalist, even back then, reporting with audio, learning how to be on camera, but also learning how to shoot and edit and everything you can, because all those skills at some point you'll need those. And it's very interesting. Some almost 30 years later, the radio folks are they're trying to do a little more video and, a lot more digital copy. The people in newspapers are trying to do video and do podcasts, and people on TV are trying to do podcasts and do a lot more digital. And so this idea of multimedia stuff is not new. It's something that's been going on. And I think I had a lot of different mentors, and I would recommend to all of you, if you want to be in journalism, law, and have a long career, find mentors and people that you can talk to regularly. And I have still a lot of folks I talk to. Ann Trujillo, who's a main anchor at Channel 7 in Denver. And then a lot of people in public media, I've come to network with and get to know.
Wonderful, thank you. Lindsay, your thoughts?
Definitely my father, because he grew up as a DJ, ended up becoming his own, business owner. I know that I lived and breathed this from the minute I was born, and I kind of wanted to shy away from it like my siblings did. Every single one of them, which is 4 of us in total, went their own direction. But I was drawn to the sales aspect of it, which is kind of what we talked about before with Brady. I was really good at it. And so with that, I realized that I found my niche, and that along with the knowledge that my dad had in radio broadcasting and the knowledge that I brought in from the School of Business, as far as sales is concerned, it was a perfect mix for the both of us. And so that's how it ended up.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to turn to one of the student questions that was submitted. And this can be for anyone that would like to respond. Student wrote, I believe that I'm a good public speaker. I'm very extroverted. So I'd like to know how flexible public speaking is within the working world. So perhaps, as a skill that you should hone, or a skill that is required in communications and media. Can any of you speak to that? And really, I assume all of you, particularly those in broadcast, that is a big part of your work.
Yeah, excuse me. I could start on that. Yeah, public speaking, I was terrified of it when I went to UNC. When we had to give speeches, it was absolutely the scariest. I dropped my note cards once, and so that was tough. Yeah, I mean, you have to have the gift.
You have to laugh about that, because do people still use note cards? I mean, don't they like put their notes on their cell phone?
I probably still use note cards. I'm definitely, I got
Me too.
the notebooks, and
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it helps. I mean, you have to have the gift of gab on the radio side or the broadcast side, because if you do drop your note cards, or you just forget something, or there's breaking news, you have to be kind of willing to go with the punches. But like Lindsay talked about in the sales side, you could be dealing with one client, or you could be speaking to hundreds. I mean, you could be invited to events to speak. Different. If you're doing a radio station broadcast, you could be in front of people remote. Obviously, Reginald knows on the TV side of things. So yeah, public speaking, I would say it's important for almost anything when it comes to the media, even if you're writing, because you're interviewing, you're asking questions to coaches too, and you need to be articulate. You can't kind of mumble through that. So yeah, I would say public speaking, really focus on that, what that looks like for you, because you're going to need it in so many different aspects.
How can a student practice that skill and hone it?
I grew up on a farm, so I actually did my own radio show to myself in a tractor to kill time. I actually would broadcast to myself. I was entertained, highly entertained. I played a lot of Madden football back in the day. I would mute the game and broadcast it. So those were weird things. My mom and dad thought I was going crazy. They'd walk in and just ask me what I was doing. But that's kind of where I grew with it. Being on the tractor, I only got one radio station, and it was pop. So you could only hear Backstreet Boys so many times before you just turn that thing off, and then you just do your own radio show. So that, for me, that's what I did. And then I would get old ESPN magazines out and pretend I was doing a show in my room. So yes, you got to get a little weird. I would suggest get weird, and that's how it helps.
I love it. Way to be honest, right? Now we all know a lot more about Brady.
I recommend that you, I was going to say, I recommend.
Ryan, you agree?
Oh.
What are some of the skills that you've used, or the strategies you've used to hone your public speaking skills?
Well, I mean, coming from the PR side of things, and particularly when it comes to politics and public policy, I've used it almost every single day in a couple different capacities. When I did public speaking class at UNC, I loved it. I couldn't wait until I got up there. Because I was sort of somebody who thrived on the energy of the crowd. So if there were a lot of nodding heads or smiles, or people seemed to lean forward or be interested, the more energy they gave me, the more I drew from them. And I think that came naturally, but I don't think I say that lightly, because I do know there are a lot of people who don't like public speaking, or it's really awkward for them at first. Even people who are incredibly talented in journalism and mass comm. I don't think that anybody, I think a few people have it naturally, and I wouldn't include myself in that category. And of course, as I'm public speaking right now, a siren is going by. I don't know if any of you could hear that. Yeah, so it's like that old thing, the show must go on. You do have to, it's like a muscle, you have to exercise it. But just to wrap it up, really I use it for client pitches. You walk into a boardroom of people who are way above you, and you're pitching them on your public relations services, and you got to get the sale, and your bosses are counting on you and your expertise, and they put you in the room, much like Brady and Lindsay with the sales side of things. And that can get really tough, and you want to know that your muscle is strong at that point when you walk in and it's game time. But also, they call in Washington, they call us press flacks for a reason, right? You take all the flack from the press for your boss. I've represented, public figures in my career before, and it is a hard thing to stand there at a podium or in a hallway with microphones in your face. And people asking you questions, and sort of having to represent somebody in that way. And I think the skills, the things about breathing, eye contact, staying calm, really understanding the thoroughness and the intimacy of your message and what you're trying to get across. So, like the Boy Scouts say, or whatever, preparation is the most important thing. I think if you're on the other side, doing the public relations, being prepared and knowing how to execute on the mechanics will kind of fuel your confidence for public speaking. And then you don't really think about it. You just do it. And, you kind of wake up from it afterwards. And you're like, wow, I did it. I accomplished it. So it's critical on both sides of the coin, I think.
I love that. And that's actually maybe a great segue to another question that we got. And I want to pose this to Reginald. So as you're practicing skills in school, you might be building a reel, you might be building a portfolio. What are some of the assets, the career assets that students should be creating or preparing while they're enrolled at UNC so that they can more successfully apply for that first job?
Well, I wanted to, one thing I do want to address something in the last thing also, like Brady said, practice, 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 but then find those mentors who, when you play that tape and play your voice and everything, they can say, oh, you know what, you need to correct this, or you need this, you can do this better. And the bottom line also, whether you're on TV, radio, whatever, you're telling a story, and you have to be a good writer. You have to really be able to tell something. There's times I've worked with reporters and they're ad lib stuff, and maybe after 2 minutes I'm like, what did they say again? And we don't have the luxury of replaying that again. I mean, you can digitally, but by that time someone's just blown you off. And so you've got to be able to say it well and say it right. And what I recommend is that people, and I think I'm talking with students here who are graduating this spring, and I say, right now is when, and as early as you can, you need to start building your work and finding ways to get your work. If you want to be a reporter, getting your stories, whether for radio or television, together on a timeline on YouTube or on SoundCloud or whatever, and getting that in front of your mentors and having them critique that. And then that is what you're going to want to put in your resume. Don't wait until someone asks for it to send it out to bosses. And because what happens is, when I see it in a news director, or when I was in Dallas and I worked with a news director, literally they're scanning through things, and in 5 seconds they'll decide whether or not they want to talk to you or not. And we get tons and tons of people especially who want to be on the on-air side. And there's lots of graduates out there, not just at UNC, but in Colorado, but all across the country, who want to be reporters or hosts or whatever. And those people who want to be producers, and which is the track I went to because I wanted to be the big picture person. I wanted to help decide what goes in the newscast or help decide it's in a show. That's a lot of responsibility. But also, for those folks, because there's a fewer folks that want to do that, but they enjoy the organization and everything. It's just letting managers know that, and letting that I may not want to go the on-air route, but I do enjoy the organizing, the producing, booking, or whatever. And a lot of managers, you believe it or not, will push you to the head of the line because there's just not a lot of people that want to do that. But you also have to get your work together, whether again it's an audio on SoundCloud or something, or if you have a newscast or a sample show that you're putting together for television, putting it on YouTube and sending those links out.
Thank you. I want to kind of piggyback off that and turn to Lindsay as a station owner. And a few people have kind of touched on this, all the different roles that you play and how that might be reflective of the different types of careers in communication and media. I'd love to get your thoughts on, if you're sitting down with a student one-to-one and she's saying, Lindsay, I really want to go into media. I don't know what that means. What are the options? What could a career look like? What are some of the examples that you could share with her from your experience?
There are at least a dozen, if not more, different heads that could be in this business. So like I mentioned before, I'm a business major. My dad was a communications major. So between the two of us, we did this. But I mean, you can have an accountant, gosh knows I need one right now. And we can have producers, as mentioned before with Reginald. We need people that create copy. So journalism majors would be a big deal. Anything that has to do with digital, as mentioned before, everything's going digital right now, whether it's audio, video, social media. So literally, it's so expansive. It's too much for me to explain in this conversation. But anything you could possibly think of in a household, for example, you have to clean, you have to pay the bills, you have to maintain the yard, you have to maintain the house, You have to make sure that everything's up and running. So just in a normal household, you have 5 different positions. In a business, you'd have closer to possibly 20.
I appreciate that. Other reactions to that for those of you that have worked with a lot of different areas or a lot of different types of communications professionals? What are some of the types of roles that you've seen?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Lindsay talked about writing copy. I attended a radio conference in Chicago several years ago, and we're a small station, and one of our questions to a panel was, hey, how do you balance that? Because our sales guys would write scripts for our clients, and one of our questions for the script writers was, hey, how do you balance that time between selling and handling your account and writing scripts and coming up with scripts and new ideas? They couldn't answer it because they were paid to write scripts only. That's all they would do. So like Lindsay said, there's some stations, yeah, they'll hire just straight up a script writer to write scripts. Some stations, right, your sales guys are writing all the scripts and you work together. So I thought that was interesting as far as the industry, and it also depends on the size. I mean, there might be positions available just for copywriters, or if you're a sales guy and you can also let them know, hey, you're creative and you can write scripts. Man, being a kind of a Swiss Army knife really helps in the media industry. So yeah, I thought that was interesting because we asked the question and they couldn't answer it because they've never sold anything. So it was fascinating.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'd say even on the PR side of things, you need to know how to do it all. And you also need to know how people like Brady and Reginald and Lindsay want information delivered to them. On the PR side of things, I always say, listen, I work for the journalist and I work for my client, which the client hates and the journalists also hate too. So welcome to the middle. But you got to know how to write. And, lots of people say the press release is dead. It is not. You have to know how to write it. You have to know how to make it good. You got to be able to hammer out Facebook posts, LinkedIn posts, tweets, lots of tweets. You got to know how to write client emails. You got to know how to pitch the media. I'm sure they could talk all day about terrible pitches they've got over the years. So you really got to know how to be, to Brady's point, that Swiss Army knife, and kind of have all kinds of tools in your toolbox to be able to use at any particular time.
If you get the chance to do an internship or in your first jobs or every job you do, find out what everybody does at the station, because, just because I'm in news doesn't mean I may affect sales. If I'm in a commercial newsroom, as I was for dozens of years, they are selling the newscast that's being produced. They are selling the talent, the on-air talent. There's a reason why you see people on buses and everything, and it's a sales job, and if I had a great connection with the salespeople, partially because, I produced newscasts that were tops in ratings, and they would say yay, or, if they're saying, what, we're seeing, slippage here or whatever in this county, and they have incredible research. And, tap into those folks and tap into the engineering folks, because, in Colorado, you have things called mountains, and sometimes signals bounce all over the place, and it may be, as a news person, the difference between your broadcast, your live shot getting on the air, or, or figure out why, they're low power and during the nighttime and high power during the daytime, and why people can hear you at certain times, and it will help you, and in all circuits. And it's just, and PR folks, and I can tell you, when I was a producer, I was producing the 4:00 news in Dallas. I would always have at least one PR person that would call me 2 minutes before broadcast, and they would get hung up on. And so, because that person did not, invest the time to talk to broadcasters about why that's a bad idea to call me 2 minutes.
Yeah. Horrible.
Okay, tip to students. If you take a PR job, do not call 2 minutes before broadcast pitch.
Yep.
Please write that down.
I'd like to touch upon something that Reginald said that is very actually top of mind for me right now, is the engineering aspect. I have 4 different engineers working for the radio station right now, and they're They're all sprinkled throughout Colorado. And if anybody's interested in doing radio or television engineering, right now is the time. Everybody's retiring and nobody's coming into the job pool. It's crazy, the supply demand, just an FYI.
Even
I
the people who
appreciate
paint
that.
the towers.
Right?
So, that's actually a really good segue into like circling back to the academic side. So students listening hears you say that and they're like, well, what is that? How do I go about that? So what are some of the types of courses, majors, areas of study, internships like Reginald raised that will help students explore the different opportunities that are currently available and those that are likely to become available in the coming years?
Regarding engineering as described, you need to have an electrical background, not to be completely an electrician, but you need to understand a little bit of the mechanics of the towers. And just as Reginald was mentioning, there's certain times of day that you can hear the signal, you can see the signal better than you can at night, depending on the atmosphere. So there's literally engineering, science, and the business aspect of it, because these guys are the ones that will climb up to the tower and make sure that if there's too much ice, they'll go up there with a blow dryer and get it done. But there's not a lot of those guys to go around, and it's very well paid, very well paid. And there is a lot of television and radio stations throughout the state of Colorado, just as an example, that would be loving any help that they can get.
Awesome, thank you. Other thoughts on majors, areas of study, coursework, internship styles, or opportunities that our students should be honing in on or focusing on?
I'll say from the PR side of things, business classes are huge. You know, a lot of what you do, especially at the high level of PR, when you make it to VP, SVP, you are not really doing a whole lot of tactical execution, strategy, you're doing budgets, you're doing client management. Business classes will absolutely give you a lot of that foundational knowledge. You need to understand the bottom line. You need to understand that when clients fall on hard times, the first thing they cut out of their budget is public relations and marketing. And if you're working for an agency or you're representing one of those people, you have to vie and understand, just like in a similar fashion to the nonprofit world, you have to understand that you're on the chopping block. And if you don't demonstrate your effectiveness with the dollars that you're being paid, and PR is one of the hardest things to prove ROI on, right? What we do is intangible. You can't put metrics on it. And so you need to understand some of those knowledge, some of that knowledge. But I'll also say, and I've heard students before gripe about taking news writing class or taking layout and design. I can't tell you how many times as a PR guy working in Washington, D.C. on like political stuff that I've had to literally tell my CEO how things work or why we don't write like that. You know, that's not how the AP writes. You know, clarity, concise, you have to ban the word that. You know, all of these different things. You need to know that if you're going to work in PR. You need to know what all of the journalists do, as well as you need to know what you do. That's how you'll succeed. And so taking a wide diversity of classes in multiple disciplines from multiple colleges, I think will be really useful for everyone.
I appreciate that. I know our career director is going to appreciate hearing that too. She very much believes that.
For journalists, I would say, you know, obviously writing. I mean, it just doesn't. And, you know, when if you're not in class, go online to newspaper, take that and break it down to a 20-second story, you know, a long story, and see if, you know, and tell your best friend or see if they can understand what the story is about. It's just not, when you're television, you're not just talking and ad-libbing and having, you know, you have to be able to convey that story. And I would say languages. We are a diverse, growing diverse world. And if all you've had is high school Spanish, and I actually had great Spanish classes at UNC in Candelaria Hall, but and I grew up speaking a little bit, but being able to talk to, this is a very diverse country, and whether it's Spanish or it's Asian languages or whatever, you're going to be in communities where, to get the story, you may have to speak a different language. And UNC is the time to take those really intensive classes that, can really help you. And then engineering, I know Lindsay talked about, the folks in the towers, but, computer science for folks who may be interested in more the technical aspects, because, there are times stations can't even get on the air. I've lived in Texas, and we had hurricanes come on, and the stations were knocked down, or they had to relocate. And the only thing they could do is do their newscasts over Facebook or over digital. And that is becoming as major part of our mainframe as the traditional towers. So, and those positions do pay a lot too, because stations need someone there 24 hours sometimes, or especially when stuff goes wrong or goes down, to get us back on the air.
I love that. I think it's great that there is such a breadth of opportunity, and that it's not so niche, and that it seems that opportunity continues to grow. So as the way we communicate and the audiences that we communicate to continue to grow and to diversify, the opportunity to share our message also grows. And there's just more chances to communicate. And I think every opportunity is one that students at UNC can take advantage of. But one of the things we often talk about with our students, and some of our alumni have reflected on in a variety of professions, is the idea of, am I good enough? So I'm proud to have attended UNC. I feel like I have a great education, but here I am standing, shoulder to shoulder with somebody who maybe attended a private school, an Ivy League, Mizzou, for journalism. How do you carry your professional identity and your UNC education? What do you feel about that? And what could you share with our students to give them the vote of confidence that they are prepared, they are ready to enter their profession when they finish?
I'll take that one right off the bat. Oh, sorry, Lindsay, do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Ryan. You're good.
I'll just say I totally experienced that moving from Colorado to DC. I graduated UNC. 2 months later, I found myself with no job, no opportunity, no nothing in DC. I will tell you right now, UNC probably prepares you better than the big name schools. And I think it goes back to what Lindsay and Reginald and Brady all talked about. Those people who teach you and guide you through the process and allow you to come see them during office hours and give their personal time, personal direction to you will make all the difference in the world. Your brand of UNC or where you come from or whatever doesn't mean a hill of beans in even the biggest cities in the world or in the country, especially in this space. In fact, you're probably at an advantage. And I would argue that the people you're going up against, maybe standing shoulder to shoulder with, as Lindsay says, for a job, they think they have the upper advantage because they have a brand. Well, guess what you have? Experience, grit, understanding, personal direction, a network of people behind you and standing shoulder to shoulder with you. So you're not alone in your job application process. You literally have an army standing behind you. Those people, they're just numbers to their university. And I'm not knocking on them. It's not a knock on them or their person, but I'm just saying you have to understand what's special about UNC. You have to understand what's special about your program and what you're doing and where you're going. And I really believe that it doesn't make any difference. You go in there, you knock out that interview, you kill it, you tell people what you did and all the things that you've learned. And you can showcase the supplemental stuff that you've done with your internships and your networking and all of that. It will make a difference. Don't worry about it. You're at an advantage.
Go Bears.
Go Bears, yes.
Lindsay, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the question that you asked comes back to the phrase that I know as imposter syndrome, where people don't really understand where they are in their own skin, I guess. And so, for example, for me, I'm still in high school in my mind. Obviously, I'm not physically, but I often look around, I'm like, wow, this is what I have. And I feel like it's not reality, if that makes any sense. But for those people that are going out and thinking that they're competing against peers, in the regard that UNC is such a supportive network of people as an organization, as a school, they're never alone. And so I actually picked up the phone, I can't remember how many times the first year after I left UNC, to ask for help to my professors. And actually at the Montfort School of Business, they have inside of it, there's like a small business help program. And so I relied on them a lot, and they never turned me away. And that's something to consider for everybody else, because you're not alone. And in short, it's just fake it till you make it. And you'd be surprised how many people don't fake it that well. So yeah, you go for it. Yep.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. Reginald, you've had a really remarkable career, and you've worked and lived across the country. So you've interacted with professionals who've attended a variety of different universities. So you have a really unique perspective on this question, and I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I think it is the work equity you put in, and if you're the person who stays longer and makes the connections, and I think that's what's valued, and that's certainly now that I'm in a hiring position, what I value. Your school, and I get what Ryan says, because I know on the East Coast it's very people are very drawn to Ivy League, and but what is behind that? It's kind of like. Remember Pharrell telling a singer, you're good looking, but what can you do with your voice? It's the talent, it is the ambition, it is, and if you don't have, anything to back up that degree, I was an adjunct at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth when I lived in Dallas, and I would come in and I was like, oh my gosh, you are paying all this money for this school? Because there I had students that had no idea, really what the real world was out there, because they weren't getting out there and doing that. And I was like, you could have gone to a public university and been guided like I did at UNC, and been guided and got experiences and feedback and mentors that could have told you this is the route to go. It's not just going to a very expensive private university, and sure, they have their pluses, and I'm sure they're great parties and great football games and that sort of thing. I'm sure Bears football is great as well, but it is what is behind that. What's the talent? What are you honing your skills? Are you trying to be better? Are you trying to get that next story the next day, or that next sales deal, or are you really believing in what you're doing? And so the university doesn't matter unless you put all the ambition behind it.
Awesome, thank you. Well, just gives me goosebumps to hear that. I'm a proud Bear, and so I never want any of our students or alumni to feel that they aren't good enough, because I have the privilege as the alumni director of meeting all of you, and I've got to say UNC has some phenomenal alumni. The professions and the careers that you and so many others around the country have pursued is nothing beyond inspiring. And that's why events like this are so great, is exposing your expertise and your stories to students, I think is wonderful. Kind of going down that vein a little bit, we have a question that came in. The UNC community, what community member made a difference, and do you keep in touch with them? So kind of to Lindsay's point of calling her faculty members and coming back to the school, are there others at the UNC community, whether it's faculty, staff, your classmates, alumni that you've stayed in contact with? And if so, why and how?
For me, I still am in very much
I've
contact.
stayed in contact.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
I've been
Lindsay.
in contact with Chris Garcia. I think he still works with UNC, and he's an alumnus as well. And we stay in very close communication. We're both here in Greeley, so anytime we can help each other out, there's a lot of resources still available to both of us. And so we scratch each other's back in that regard.
Thank you. Brady.
I still stay in contact with Dale Edwards quite a bit. We talk often about issues that might come up or anything like that. We've actually utilized him on some of the election nights too, to help us loan some students for coverage. So yeah, I've stayed in close contact.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing. Some of my contacts still work. I worked at the rec center, so I had a job on campus. I still stay in touch with them, which was great business experience. I'm sure Lindsay can attest. But also in student government, student activities, Evan Welch over there, fantastic. I still talk to him. He's great. Dale Edwards was probably one of the most interesting professors I had. His media law class, fantastic. I loved it. It totally fueled my political, like, I gotta do this comm stuff. Lynn Clyde Silverstein, fantastic writing, absolutely amazing. Like I said, Kelly Scott Raisley now totally opened the door for me. You guys could not have a better kind of cast of characters taking care of you and ushering you into this profession. So yeah, everybody, campus jobs, student government, my classes, Brooke Blair, if you haven't taken him in political science, whoa, like amazing people.
He was my advisor. I love Brooke.
I mean, I'm telling you, you don't know what you have at UNC until you get out in the world and you're like, wow, these people really were awesome and they made a difference. So all of them.
Well, we will make sure that those faculty hear that.
I was on the staff of the Mirror, my freshman and sophomore and a little bit of my junior year. And so every once in a while we have little anniversaries. I haven't been to, I don't even know where the office is now, but and that was great because I got to write and it was nice getting paid for that and got to cover some pretty neat stories. And I interviewed Condoleezza Rice, who's former Secretary of State, but she was a provost back in the 90s, and she was invited by the political science group to speak on campus. But there's a lot of memories we like to share. I was joking, I wasn't going to tell the story, but I am. But one Valentine's Day, the staff at the Mirror, we decided to stuff all the papers with condoms to promote safe sex, which caused a lot of consternation and awful phone calls to the office of the president. And the Greeley Tribune didn't like that. But there's all sorts of memories you get from college and hanging out with other journalists.
And I think that that's one of the great things about UNC. And I mean, I will always champion this university because the experiences that all of us have may be a little bit unique and different, whether it was related to a campus job, our major, student orgs, but all of us had a great experience in some way and something that kept us tied together. And because of UNC's size, you really do find that sense of community and you don't get lost. You're not just a number. And that does make such a difference. And I hear it from alumni all the time that as they go out and work, particularly those who leave Colorado, half of our alumni live in Colorado, the other half leave. UNC stays with them and they reflect on that experience. They reflect on the intimacy of the campus community and the relationships with faculty and the support that faculty offer them. And you really appreciate that in such a different way once you've graduated because you realize that it's special and not every place offers that. And I think for the students who are considering UNC right now, I would just offer that to them. And I think everything that you've shared with us today and what I hear from other alumni, that it echoes and it rings true. I do want to kind of circle back before we run out of time and turn to your last bit of advice that you would like to offer incoming students, current students who may be thinking about a career in the media, in communications, PR. What do you want to say to them? What advice would you give them? Reginald, let's start with you.
Oh, yeah, I was just waiting to see. I would say that, I took it probably too seriously because I was so driven. So, make sure you have fun, make sure you give yourself time for make friends and everything. But, know that, this is your time to really just learn and meet and network. And, I'm an introvert, but, when it comes to being, in journalism, turn that extrovert or, ask people, like we said, learn about, classes that you never or people that you never would have met before, and um, meet and friends and mentors who can advise you. When you do a story, show me, let's look at the story and let's talk about it. Did you understand what I was trying to report on? Or or make those connections of with someone who's in sales. You just never know, because what I found in this business is you always run into the same people all the time. And I know the chief meteorologist at the NBC station in DC was yeah, Bears grad, and former TV anchor in Detroit and New York City was, graduated from UNC. So you will run into people all the time, um, and it's just good to have that network that you can say, look at my work and help. How can I improve? And let me help you improve. And this is the time to make those connections.
Thank you. Ryan, how about you? What final advice would you like to share?
It sounds trite, but I would say believe in yourself and believe in UNC. Your years here are supposed to be the catapult that gets you into what you're doing. So load yourself up and stress yourself with a multitude of ideas and experiences and connections to people. You absolutely have to understand the different mediums, and you have to understand what they're looking for, and you have to stress test yourself in your writing. Um, and you have to do the things that make you super scared in your career. It's, all the self-help people are going to say, oh, you got to do things that make you scared. I'm talking about your career. This is your career. This is the thing going to put food on your table, money in your pocket. You got to get out there and do it. And, reaching out, I think Reginald had said it best, you just have to reach out, lean on those people that are there for you, people on this call, people all at UNC. But beyond that, I would just say sharpen all the tools in your Swiss Army knife. Learn how to write and be open to things. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with in this industry who started out in PR and went to journalism, or who started out in journalism and now work in PR. And I can't tell you how many people said, you know what, I thought I wanted to be an anchor, but then I wanted to be behind the scenes, or vice versa. You got to be open to that. But the only way that you're going to do it is, or figure that out, is if you go and do it. So just rip off the Band-Aid and don't be afraid. Well, be afraid, but use it as fuel for yourself. Your fear should be your fuel, and I promise you, you're going to land just fine. Adversity is normal, but to get you through the adversity, UNC will be there all the way, and you're in really good hands. So don't worry about it, and just go out there and kick some butt.
Thanks. Lindsay, how about you? Final advice.
I believe he just encompassed it all. Honestly, that fear of doing things is probably the worst crutch anybody can have, because you do need to be, like Brady mentioned, a Swiss Army knife. You have to be at least a little bit knowledgeable in a little bit of everything. Like I mentioned before, here at the radio station, I could have 20 positions open for all kinds of different things. So if you're not a little bit curious as to where that wind might blow you, you might want to explore a little bit more, because you might really find out that you're very much excelling in something completely different. But yeah, go ahead, bite the bullet, do it. Just do it.
Thank you. And Brady, your final advice.
Yeah, you guys, all three, you've talked about internships too. Take your internship seriously. I can't tell you how many interns we've had that they show up, they show up 5 minutes before their shift. They don't ask questions. Not to make it sound mean or anything, they're not memorable. So be memorable, ask questions, be interested, learn about the place you're going to intern. The worst thing you can do is in that intern meeting have no clue about the station you're going to intern at. I've had interns ask if we're a country station. It's like, you can do a simple search on the place you're going to. So take that seriously, and because you're going to get what you put into an internship. The managers, as Lindsay said, they're all so busy. They're doing 4 million different things. So for them to take time to go up to an intern and just randomly start helping them outside of what they're supposed to do, it can sometimes be a tall order. So take it upon yourself, ask that manager or the person if there's something more you can do. Because sometimes you might not make $1 for every single thing you do. You might have to do some things a little bit just to get your foot in the door. So I always say, take your internship seriously. I was an intern here and I've been here ever since. And I asked about every single thing. I wanted to set up remotes, and produce, sell, talk, whatever, shovel the snow out front. I mean, so that's my advice is once you get that internship, really dive in, learn about that company, and make yourself memorable.
I appreciate
Dilly.
that. And for those who are listening, I'd encourage you to reach out to our panelists on LinkedIn. Norma did add their LinkedIn profiles to the chat. So before the webinar ends, perhaps copy and paste those into a Word doc or just click on them right now and reach out. Ask the questions that you have, and maybe you were too scared to ask of us live, but reach out to our panelists, ask the questions, and to Brady's point, be memorable. I think everyone here has shared such amazing advice, and I mean, I could listen to alumni talk all day, and clearly all of you are such wonderful talkers, and you could hold a conversation for hours if we let you. But we also want to respect your time, particularly those of you on East Coast or Central Time. It's a little bit later than it is here in Greeley. So with that, Norma's going to come back on and close us out. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us. It is such a pleasure and a privilege to host you on behalf of the UNC Alumni Association. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can do it in person sometime.
That'd be great.
Like Lindsay said, thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining us today and for sharing such great industry insight with all of us. It was an honor to host you today. Hearing you speak and share your experience and your insight gave me chills. I had chills the entire time. So thank you, thank you, thank you. To everyone watching, thank you for joining your fellow Bears this afternoon. And I hope that you took away as much as I did this afternoon. This event is being recorded and it will be available on demand in the alumni website at www.unco.edu/alumni/careers. You can also find future events that we will be hosting in the spring there. Thank you once again to everyone watching, all the panelists that joined us, and go Bears.